Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May. We know her as our organizational and clinically trained psychologist. She is also the president and co-founder of A.M. and Associates Incorporated, the president and founder of Productions Incorporated. She's an author, editor, musician, and she is the 2023 President's Distinction Award from the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation. Yes, it's a mouthful.
It's
That's why
okay.
she is the first Black chair elect or first Black chair of the Michigan Health Council Trustee Board in its 82-year history. And she helped create a column for Michigan, or she was part of a group that created a column for Michigan Women's Forum um, entitled Stars, Scholars Teaming to Alleviate Racism in Society. And the name of the group was Phenomenal Michigan Women. Did I say that right?
Mostly.
You have so much. But
Okay. Oh no, I'm so sorry. I was just going to say, the Phenomenal Michigan Woman is a column that I created myself,
yes,
and that's separate from the Stars one. But that's okay.
that's okay. I apologize.
That's
But
okay.
Dr. Angie, we are so happy to have you here.
Thank
Welcome to
you.
the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. All right, let's get right to our topic. Dr. Angie, there is so much happening in the United States right now. We've had, I think it's 9 people. I know Keith Porter was murdered in the street by a federal government officer. We have Renee Good, and we have, I believe it's Andre Peretti, who was a NICU nurse who was on video helping a woman get up off the ground who had been knocked down by federal officials. Dr. Angie, I'm not going to ask you why this is happening because we know why this is happening. But what I want you to help us with, what is this doing to our psyche? Because I can tell you, every time I talk to my girlfriends or my friends, everybody says the same thing. We hate watching the news, but we have to watch the news because we need to be informed and see what's happening. And so everybody's looking at their own circles of information, whatever you would call it, just to keep up to date on what's happening. And everybody's sharing things. And I'm going to tell you, every time somebody sends me a video of somebody being shot, it reminds me of George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Ahmaud Arbery, Tamir Rice, who was 13. Black people get killed in this country all the time by federal people, by the police. And it's always, we were doing something, we were at the wrong place at the wrong time. But there's a different narrative that's happening with Renee Good and Andre Peretti. And I understand it. This is America. We are very much color focused. But what is this? What is the impact that this is having on our national psyche? Because so many people are telling me they're overwhelmed, they're anxious, they're stressed out, they're fearful, or they're angry and they don't know why they're angry, but they're angry because you're watching continuous um, clips. Because I've been there. And I've had to put the phone down like, nope, can't watch anymore. There's nothing I can do about this in this immediate situation. It's a terrible thing that's happened. We need to make sure that we mobilize, we go out and vote, that we help our neighbors vote, that we watch over each other and protect each other as best we can, and do whatever else we need to do um, to identify ourselves as American citizens, which in 2026, who would have thought that Americans would have to provide papers? And I spoke with a friend of mine who's Jewish. And he says, Kimberly, he said, not so long ago, my people were asked to provide papers. I said, I know. I said, I read that diary of Anne Frank in 5th grade. I remember that. I don't know what happened to these people that they didn't, or they just don't care, which is what I think it is. But I am concerned. I'm concerned because I have children, I have nieces and nephews. What is this doing to our mental well being?
Well, you encapsulated really so much of what is happening to our psyche in this awful situation that we find ourselves in our country. Um, when you talked about the things that you're hearing from friends and family, what you're hearing online, when people are listing the fear, the anxiety, the anger, these swirl of emotions, none of which are joyful, positive emotions.
Not at all.
Um, so it's what it's doing to our psyche. It's also what it's doing to our bodies, because of course we're whole beings. So what happens with our bodies impacts our mind. What happens to our mind, and our emotions impacts our bodies, of course. So it is it's absolutely a healthy thing, like you said, that you just put it down. It's just like, sometimes it's really important to know when we need to step away and not look at every single thing that comes up, because unfortunately there's so much every day,
Mm-hmm.
um, that that's one of the ways to, if not inoculate, protect our psyche, protect our mental health, by having those cutoffs of how much you consume,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that not consuming and looking at the details and the video and reading, every little detail of what has gone on that day in that particular hour doesn't mean you're not informed more globally of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's very fraying. It's very fraying to our psyche. Um, and speaking of the mental part and the impact on the physical part, as we talked about in some previous conversations that you and I have had,
Mm-hmm.
um, psychologists do a lot of studying of the nervous system. Um, Pardon me, we do a lot of studying of the mind, body, brain biology connection in general, but particularly the nervous system, because um, that's very much the brain, the spinal cord, and all of those things that we think of when we think about the mind and behavior and all of that. And I mention that because, as we've mentioned in some other conversations, our nervous system has different parts to it. So it's got those sections um, that deal with our conscious movement and musculature, that we consciously do when we consciously use our brains to tell our muscles and our nervous systems to move our legs so we can walk, that kind of thing. And then we have the parts of our nervous system that are more on automatic, which we refer to as the autonomic nervous system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the part of, this, and those of you who remember your science classes or some, intro to psychology, that's the smooth muscle fibers that do things automatically for us. So right now you're not necessarily thinking and using your brain to consciously make your heart pump or make
Mm-hmm.
your digestion work, but that automatic part of the nervous system is doing that for you, assuming it's functioning well. So that's true for all parts of us, the conscious things that we move and operate in terms of our nerves and our muscles and all of that, our skeletal muscles and everything, and the unconscious. So what happens with our psyche and what happens with the nervous system? We are designed to, meaning humans and mammals and etc., we are designed to be able to handle certain levels of stress over certain periods of time. So we're, you don't have to be in the field of psychology or mental health to recognize the term fight or flight. We hear people talk about the fight or flight, response. And that fight or flight is part of, those aspects of the nervous system where it's built into our bodies and our minds to respond as we need to stress or high stress situations. That means danger. That means high anxiety. That means if we're being threatened in any way. And we respond to those things by, either fighting or fleeing, trying to figure out how to get to safety, trying to get out of there. If someone's throwing this just happened, did you see about one of our congressional representatives, Ilhan Omar.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes, and her automatic reaction,
Right.
when she saw something, she didn't even know what was coming at her, kind of thing. She was getting
Hmm.
ready to handle her business.
Hmm.
Um, all of those, it's not like she sat in a rocking chair for 15 minutes to figure out how to respond. It was instant. That's a part of that nervous system. So we're designed to protect ourselves in emergency situations, to get out of there, to fight, flee, whatever it is. And then we have the part, that's the part one part of our nervous system that goes on automatic. Then the other part of the automatic nervous system calms things back down to homeostasis, which means to, just a regular equilibrium
Hmm.
when we're out of danger.
Hmm.
So we may vary in our levels of resilience. Some people are more resilient than others, depends on what they've been through, depends on your health and all of those things, your
Hmm.
immune system, etc. And also the kinds of things that you've been through as well. I've heard at least one reporter make the point that our representative Ilhan Omar, lest we forget or didn't know, she came from a place of war. She came through a war zone. So, and not that you get used to it, but her body knows how to react when certain types of threats come to her.
Hmm.
That other part of our automatic system in our bodies is designed, like I said, to bring us back down to equilibrium. We were not designed mentally or physiologically or emotionally to live in a heightened sense of emergency and anxiety and fear. But when we are in those situations, whether it may be a war zone, whether it may be, whatever kind of dangerous situations, sometimes in certain neighborhoods where people live, sometimes it's what's happening right now when we have Gestapo, like, folks coming into communities. When that happens, and our body compensates by basically keeping us in that fight or flight state. It frays can fray the ends of the neurons, which are the nerves in the nervous system. It can actually impact the immune system when you stay in that heightened fear, anger, etc. It can increase, as some of the people you talked about who shared their feelings, increase feelings of depression.
Hmm.
It can increase physiologically, like hypertension. It can impact your blood pressure, can go up and stay up there. Um, it can even impact addictive behavior as well as a coping mechanism. So
Hmm.
everything from being, I won't say you're necessarily more prone to addiction, but one could be. So everything from the temptations toward addictive behavior to higher blood pressure to a weakened immune system and much more, as I said, it's all connected,
Hmm.
is impacted by living in this kind of state that we in America find ourselves in. And lest we be the ignorant, ugly Americans who are so spoiled that we don't want to make it sound like we don't understand that there are and have been in some cases for years,
Hmm.
like the Gaza Strip, like
Ukraine,
Ukraine, and I was thinking about some of the
Afghanistan,
Afghanistan and some of the African countries as well. Uh,
Rwanda, the
Rwanda,
yeah,
exactly.
the
Cameroon has been going on since
yes.
Nigeria goes up. Uh,
Hmm.
so this is for anyone really. We're speaking from our experience as Americans, of course, but
Hmm.
for any human anywhere dealing with these things, it frays the nerves and makes us susceptible to all those things that I named. And then ultimately, again, like over time, because these things can be cumulative,
Hmm.
if you're always in that heightened state of fear, you don't know what's going to happen next. It's like an unending grief, really, because you're grieving the people to whom these awful, horrible, violent things happened. Then you're also fearful that who's gonna be next, and you're grieving the loss of your lifestyle, meaning
Hmm.
your day-to-day existence, all of that grieving the loss of something that we, at least in our constitution, the way it's written, um, insists upon and promises the ability to feel safe and protected in your own home, in your own environment, those kinds of things. We know in our country that hasn't always been the case, of course. but it's written down that it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So there's grief on top of grief when this kind of situation goes on, and it's ongoing.
Yes.
And then also that accumulation and that fraying of emotions, literal fraying of nerve endings and cells, etc. It can make it harder to bounce back, each time these kinds of things happen. Now, you notice I said it can make it harder. I'm not
I
saying
heard
it
that.
necessarily does. You heard that. Because we also are blessed as humans with choice. And we've seen this again, it's not new to our country, but in this particular situation, what we are witnessing and for our country is we're seeing the decisions that individuals and communities are making to be resilient. Where they're and this is an aspect of adapting that we meaning humans are also designed with.
Mm-hmm.
How do you adapt? And the brain and the biology and all of that will like learn, what do I need to do to protect myself going further, making certain changes in terms of actual behavior, like we've seen as an example in Minneapolis, where people are now, as you've heard, of course, they're bringing food to people who can't go out. They're making behavioral decisions and changes to adapt to the situation, to try to maintain as much protection for themselves and others as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Finding ways to problem solve the situation as much as you possibly can, like many of them are doing,
Mm-hmm.
is a key aspect of being resilient when you are feeling like, beat down, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, you can only do so much depending on the situation. But with our creativity and our problem solving skills and our working together and all of those kinds of things, it's amazing what people find out that they can do and
Mm-hmm.
continue to do. And
Mm-hmm.
that in and of itself, that ability to push back and find ways to do it in big ways and in small ways, it's very heartening, and it also helps. It's a way to help combat that fraying,
Mm-hmm.
because part of the reason that people are feeling angry, even if they don't have the words for it, why am I feeling angry, is because of the helplessness,
Mm-hmm.
feeling that there's not much that they can do about the situation to change it, and then seeing the lack of accountability so far. And I do say so far,
Mm-hmm.
because one of the things I do remind people of is, so much of it is not necessarily reported in our day-to-day media consumption,
Mm-hmm.
but we know that lots to get out. The judicial system in our country does move slowly, and it
Yeah.
takes its time and all of that. However, if you look up some of these the lawsuits and the victories and the things that have been filed in court against the actions of this regime that
Mm-hmm.
we have in our country,
Yeah.
there have been multiple victories. So as bad as it is, there are some things that have been stopped, injunctions that have been put in place by different judges, et cetera. So the fight is ongoing at every level, and it's important to know that and to be aware of that as much as you can, because that too helps shore you up and help you to feel less utterly helpless.
Mm-hmm.
Problem solving with your neighbors and community, like I already mentioned, like we are seeing people do,
Mm-hmm.
also helps shore up, and fight against those feelings of hopelessness. So all of that is a part of what's going on, and it's important to remind ourselves of that without following every little thing that goes on, of course. Because yes, we want to stay informed, but we also want to have a fuller picture of the narrative, so we know what we're up against, but we also see the victories. It's important for us to see and hear about the victories, because it helps us know that we can build upon that, and that there is accountability, because the feeling that there's none whatsoever, again, is part of what feeds the anxiety and the depression and all those kinds, and the anger.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely has an emotional toll and a physical and a mental toll. But we also have things that we can do about that, and things that we can do to inoculate ourselves as much as we can, and to move forward. And there is joy. There
Yes.
is joy. There is joy even in, our, if anyone knows that, it's our African Black diaspora, members of the diaspora, that
We
there
know it.
is joy, where there is joy. Uh, but as our people have learned, and you mentioned your Jewish friend, uh, just two examples. Every group of people who've been through something similar, or this kind of awfulness, um,
Hmm.
has their sets of stories about how they were intentional about finding joy.
Hmm.
There are wonderful stories that I know of, that people can look up. Speaking of the World War II Holocaust, that
Hmm.
in which we lost so many Jewish people and citizens, where art was created, songs were sung, things that people did to shore themselves up again, and not sink into depression, but finding that resilience through creativity and community. All of those things are extremely important, and they're not just tiptoe through the daisies.
Right.
Science has proven that it does most definitely shore things up. Um, yeah, and it strengthens not just our resolve, but our ability to continue to go through what we need to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I would even argue that even during slavery, when we had
Yes,
our songs that we would sing
that's
and
right.
different things that people needed to do, it was to help you survive. And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting, Dr. Angie, because you were talking about the nervous system. And it's interesting because for African American folk, for Black folk in America, there's so much in our DNA and
Mm-hmm.
in our genes that lead us to higher rates of high blood pressure, diabetes, and stroke. And everybody's like, oh, it's how you eat. No, it's the trauma that's been passed down.
Mm-hmm.
I would even say for some of us, even with all the terrible images that we're seeing on TV, for our older people, our
Mm-hmm.
seniors, our elders, some of this, if they lived through the 60s, which if they're elder, they probably did, this is
Mm-hmm.
triggering for them because they remember what this is like and they
Absolutely.
remember the fight and what you had to do. I remember being a child and my grandmother, she was talking about having heat in the house, and she was talking about the farmhouse that she grew up in that didn't have heat, and was just one large fireplace, and you cooked in that fireplace. That fireplace provided heat for the home, but it was only for that main room. And she said that was her parents' room, and she said you had to go back to a back bedroom that had no heat. And I remember being an immature child saying, "Ooh, I couldn't have survived it." My grandmother perked right up. She said, "Oh, yes, you would have. You would have survived because you had to. You are
Mm-hmm.
part of this." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't ask for Alexa, but yes, ma'am, I would have survived." And it's funny because the same grandmother on 9/11, I remember calling her crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and after she talked to me, I said, "How do you do this?" She said, "One foot in front of the other. You keep going."
That's right.
She said, "Something's going to always happen." Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, that's
She said, "Something's going to always happen. You just got to keep moving." She said, "Baby, we have Jesus." And
mm-hmm.
I said, "You're right." And even though there are days when it seems like it's too much, I remember I said, "Jesus, you protecting us." I said, "That I appreciate."
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Angie, last question. For those of us or our listening audience who are glued to their phones, they don't have a hobby, because I know some of us are trying to knit. I like fishing. I'm trying to figure out where I can go and do some fishing and be in peace and not be harassed by anybody. But
Mm-hmm.
for the people who don't have that outlet and
Mm-hmm.
cannot put their phone down, what or turn the TV off or whatever it is, what do you suggest to help them?
Uh, that's an excellent question, and it's very, very important. Um, there were two things that you said in that your grandmother said that you shared that I would like to circle back on and use to help answer this question as well.
Okay.
Um, one thing is like where you started by talking about how it's triggering for our elders who have lived through the 60s and all of that. Very, very, very true. Through the 50s, as well, those kinds of, for sure. There's that saying, the body remembers what the mind forgets.
Yes.
So that triggering is sometimes it maybe have left your mind consciously, like it's buried back there, but you may react a certain kind of way and you remember that feeling, so you're absolutely right that generational trauma that is definitely passed down is there. But I was listening not only to what your grandmother said, but the way she said it. And the way she said it was, she gave no room. There was no.
Right.
There's no room for you can't what? What? Didn't even ask you to repeat it. No,
No.
what? No. Oh, yes, you can. With that, I imagine her with the physical nod. Oh, yes, you
Yep.
can.
With her
That,
hair tied on top of her head. Yep.
yes. Oh, yes, you can. That's
Yep.
right.
In a bun.
That insistence is necessary for survival. It's natural to question and to wonder, of course. And, sometimes you may need to, like, can I? But answer the question with, yes, I can. President Barack Obama's famous slogan, yes, we can. The insistence that you can is a very powerful psychological tool that our grandparents and our great-grandparents and great-grands understood. Yes, you can. Because they're modeling and teaching us that not just saying the words, because the words are powerful, but the insistence and the giving no space for any other, suggestion that you're not going to make it. Telling yourself you can is a huge part of not only surviving, but also thriving. So I'm not saying don't give yourself room to ask and when, can I? But answer the question with, look at here's some things. Look at the things that you have come through. Look to, like you said, look to our own history. If you don't have, there are Black folks who have ancestors who were never enslaved, and there are other folks who are never enslaved. But everybody's been through something. And war has touched every people's, even if you yourself haven't lived through it. But look to what humanity has had to go through. And some of the most brutal, horrible, awful times. And we are still here and trying to move forward. So those things are really, 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 really important. To your question about what do we say to people who can't put it down? There are few things. First of all, and this is also something that I want to respond to that you were saying that your grandmother said, and that our grandmothers and grandfathers said and everything. When she said, you have Jesus. For so long, some of the wisest, most important tools that indigenous people, our, Black folks, et cetera, knew about from the beginning of time was how important it is and was to hold on to their belief in their creator. As we've gotten more sophisticated into more modern life, in the last couple hundred years or whatever, and people have kind of, not everyone, of course, but have become more scientific minded and, oh, well, we're not sure if that really exists, but isn't that nice? They believe it. We'll let them hold on to their beliefs. Those little folklore, isn't that nice? But what our folks understood was that there's something very, very real there and very, very powerful there. We call it Christian experience as well. It's like explaining to someone who's never been in love or never knew love. You may not be able to measure it, but it most definitely exists. Right. So now we have, in the last several years, maybe a couple decades or so, scientific research that, as is often the case, catches up to what the old folks knew all along, which is that if people who and this is to those who find it hard to put the phone down and all of that as well. People who have a strong faith tend to fare better when they're facing illness, sickness, surgery, cancer. Just you can go down the list.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that we don't go through things. We don't have fear and even depression and anxiety, but those with the strongest faith, research has shown, like I said, what we've already known. So those things are really, really important. And then to lean into that while contemplating how to go about putting that phone down. So a couple of things to keep in mind for putting the phone down or turning the TV off. Going back to what your grandmother said, first of all, stop. I'm going to say just straight out, stop holding hands with the statement and the idea of what you cannot do. So
Hallelujah.
stop telling yourself I can't. That's let's just start with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that can feel like a big step for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you need to just say it even if you don't believe it. Maybe you should write it down. Maybe you should just do both and then read it back to yourself like I can. Yes, I can.
Mm-hmm.
That's a powerful thing. Um, we know that the ways that when you're learning something or trying to take on a new skill and all of that, every time you are creating a new skill or taking in new information or learning, we're creating, more synapses in the brain and more neural connections.
Mm-hmm.
So also in terms of learning and taking in information, the more ways in which you can take in information, the more that information will stick. So if you read it, that's one way of taking it in. Great. If you read it and then listen to it as well, then it's even more, solid. Nothing wrong with reading it on your tablet or your computer or whatever, but if you can write it, then you have, this is called tactile, when you're touching something, you're touching that pen to pay, pencil. So if you write it and you read it and you say it, like the more ways you can, say whatever the thing is that you're trying to remember or memorize or whatever, the more it becomes a part of you and sticks with you. Now, reminding yourself that you can do it and telling yourself that it's not necessarily new information, although for some it may be, because they're not used to thinking that, right? But even if it's not new information, the same principle applies. And that is, if you want to change a habit, you want to start a habit, you want to stop a habit, one of the first most important steps is to say out loud. This is why people do vision boards, right? Say out loud what it is you want to accomplish or stop. So stop saying that I can't. Start saying I can. Every time you think about it, say I can put it down. Even if you're not doing it yet, just I can put it down. That's really important. Say it, write it, repeat it out loud. I can put it down. I can turn it off. That's number one. Second thing is think about why you're having trouble turning it off. A lot of times when we're feeling hopeless and helpless and we're nervous and afraid, we're scared to miss any information because we think that makes us vulnerable.
Right.
And it's, that makes sense, right? You want to be well equipped. You want to know what's coming at you. But think of it this way. It's like you were saying earlier, you want to know the main things to keep in mind and be informed of what's going on. Mm-hmm. But if you step away from it for 3 minutes, your situation is not necessarily going to change that quick, or 5 minutes, not just that quick. So it's about learning how much information you can tolerate and all before give you anxiety, and then how much information you need. And it's trial and error, kind of figure that out. How much information do you really need to stay safe? Staring at every constant little movement and everything, is not only not going to keep you safe, but also that's going to take time away from the things that you need to do and problem solve to keep yourself safe. Mm-hmm. You need to kind of put it down because you have other things you need to do, not just living your life and taking care of those around you and yourself, but also, do I need to, maybe I do need to make a copy of my birth certificate and put it in my wallet. You need to put that down so you can go do it, so it can actually hinder that. So that's another thing. Also, in terms of turning it on, how long it's on and all of that, recognize that, like we said, when you're constantly inundated with certain amounts of material, it sticks with you and stays with you. So just as we want to ingrain the positive, resilient, yes, I can put this down, those kinds of things. At the same time, you also don't want to inundate your nervous system with so much traumatic imagery,
Mm-hmm.
sight and sound. I said sight and sound.
That's right. I
Sight
knew
and
what you
sound.
meant.
You know
Fine.
what I meant. You
Yeah.
know, sight and sound. Uh, that like just like you said, for our elders or anyone who's been through these kinds of things and going through it now with our Ahmaud Arbery's and all that, the history. It's also just plain not healthy. Why? Well, I can't turn it off. First of all, yes, you can. Second
Mm-hmm.
of all, if you keep it on all the time, you're taking time away from what you need to do to be able to respond in a
Right.
way that's going to keep you and your loved ones safe. You need to plan, you need all that. And then number three, you are damaging, opening yourself up to making it harder to survive and thrive because you're opening yourself up to constantly being inundated with the kind of traumatic information, meaning visuals and sight and sounds, that is further fraying to your nervous system
Mm-hmm.
and your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, I would say to people, let's think strategically about how much information you need, how long you need it. And then something else that I remember you had said a little while ago, which was excellent advice, and that is actually create a schedule. You don't have to make a whole calendar out of it, but uh, give yourself a certain amount of time to catch up on what's going on, and
Mm-hmm.
then turn it off. Give yourself a time to turn it off. Um, when you're first trying to do that, that can, it becomes one of these. Okay, I'm about, I'm about to. It may take some time. One
Mm-hmm.
suggestion I would make for that, for turning that TV off and that phone off is, remind yourself that you can, but then also maybe add something to do alternatively
Mm-hmm.
so that you schedule alternatively. So it's just like when you're trying to cut down on sugar or sweets and you say, well, I don't just want to cut that out. Let me practice replacing that with some delicious fruit that will give me the healthier sugars kind of thing. So add that as well. That can be helpful that, I will, maybe you're going to do 30 minutes or, 9 to 9:30 or whatever the case is. And then at the time you turn it off, you're turning it off to go because now it's time for me to like schedule something at 9:30. I need to put that over and then go do this, whatever the case may be. We have busy, important lives. We have things to do. If you're someone who's at home a lot and maybe you're working inside the home or not outside the home or whatever it is, there's always stuff to do. There's laundry to do. There's food to make. There's a doctor's office to come. So, just find, work. The main thing is training yourself to believe that you can and be proactive and deliberate about finding the ways to do it, scheduling time on and time off. When you feel that tug and that temptation to go back to it, ask yourself a couple questions. Uh, why do I want to pick it up again?
Mm-hmm.
I will find out what's going on, but I don't, and be your own coach, be your own therapist. I don't. Why do you self? Why do you need to pick it back up again? Because I'm afraid I'm missing something. One last thing I'll say about that too. One of the things I love to tell people is when consuming, over consuming news or whatever it is, that I have to know everything that's going on, in case that's part of the answer, because that's often, in the back of the mind. I love to ask people, so tell me, what's the news in New Guinea?
And they're like, what?
Exactly. So you don't know everything is going on everywhere, do you?
Nope. You
No,
you do
you
not.
don't. So there's gonna be, there's gonna be stuff that we miss. And that's okay because we have to remind ourselves we're not the ones holding the globe up and spinning the world, get back in our place.
Mm-hmm.
We're not running everything. We're an important participant in the things that go on. We can make a difference and we do.
Mm-hmm.
But we also need to be responsible. And so we need to think about turning it off and back on and off again as part of our responsibility to ourselves and to the very community that we are trying to help
Mm-hmm.
bolster and shore up.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Angie, that was a great way to end our show. Thank you for being on the Kim B. Davis Show. Before we get out of here, tell us where we can find you, how we can reach you, and what you have coming up next.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be on with you, Kim. And thank you for asking.
You're
I
welcome.
am, I can be found on LinkedIn. Every place is my name, as you can see here, right there. Angela Celeste May or Dr. Angela Celeste May. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Um, I do some combination of the thing, putting stuff out there as a psychologist, as an educator, as a musician and music educator as well, across those platforms. I have two Facebook pages. One is my Facebook, Angela Celeste May, and then Dr. Angela Celeste May is the one for my music career as well. You can also find myself and my sister, Michelle Ann May, who is my business partner and vice president of our company, A.M. May and Associates Incorporated, where we do counseling, consulting, and coaching. You can find us at amassociates.com for our website. And then also AMA Associates, our Facebook page, and our Instagram as well. For my music, I still have up the music for my first two albums on Reverb Nation / Angela Celeste May. You listen to the singles. You also can purchase them as well, and on iTunes. For my, where is it? Here it is. My book. You can also find my book it's called Freedom: What is the Experience of Living Without Negative Self-Imposed Limitations, with my little bookmark up in there. And I put this out in 2009, and people continue to say they find it very, very helpful. I called it Freedom because it has to do with research that I did with a wonderful group of people from many different backgrounds, and I interviewed them about how they went about coming from a place of stuckness in their lives to a place of freeing themselves from that, what they learned on that journey. And these are men and women from different backgrounds, different age ranges, all the way from the 20s into 60s and 70s. And 7 key themes came out of those interviews that they had in common. So even though it's a small group, I do find that the themes that came out of that research work was is generally universal for people that people find very helpful. So you can find that at Ex Libris, which is the publisher's website, and you can also find it at barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. It is still up there,
Awesome.
even though I'm boycotting, but I
I
haven't
know.
moved it. So yes. Oh, and what do I have coming up? I'm
Mhm.
continuing to teach voice and piano and Celeste Productions music studio in Detroit, Michigan at Marygrove Conservancy. If you have any interest in either, pardon me, my voice students I teach are all adults, predominantly teenagers and adults, but all levels, including fellow professionals. I coach as well. You can call the Marygrove Conservancy in Detroit to inquire. And if you are interested in booking me for any performances as a vocalist, flutist, etc., you can contact me at Celeste, which is my middle name. So CELESTEMUS, short for music, and the number 1 at AOL.com. And I think that's all at the moment. That's all at the moment. There's other
That's
stuff, but that's generally, yes.
But that's wonderful. That's why we love you. You stay busy, you keep us up to date, and help
Thank
us
you.
to tackle these difficult topics.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Dr. Angie. So, guys, you know me as Kimberly Basher Davis. You can find me everywhere on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter or X, LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok for right now until something happens. All those different places. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Bachelor Davis. You can hear this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. And to learn more about me as an author, visit kimbdavis.com. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you'll join us on our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent.